Thanks, Coop. And folks that listen, you've got a million things going on. So we always appreciate you taking a bit of time out of the day to come out and join an hour with us. I will always keep it under an hour. There's always a likelihood also, like today, we can move pretty quickly depending upon questions and where we go, what directions we go. I do believe, but I'm probably wrong here, that we've got some good content to talk about. And what I would ask is, if you have a question, and I'm looking at the head count, so we've got 16 folks online. If you have a question, comment, thought, you want to push back on something, raise your hand, jump in. There's absolutely not only plenty of time, but with an audience this size, with a group this size, super easy to manage, unless everything goes absolutely haywire. So feel free to ask questions. And we're going to talk about closing the year strong. As I was putting it together, I was thinking, I had 5, and then all of a sudden I came up with a 6th. So, and then I started to come up with like 9 or 10, but I figured that would bring us past the hour that we have. So I wanted to keep it somewhat short. So again, Dave Trapani from Sandler Training. If you've never heard of us, we are the world's largest sales training firm out there. And our objective is to teach salespeople how not to look like a traditional salesperson. That is our ultimate objective here. And it looks like Coop stuck these slides out there. So here's what we're going to cover. These are the 6 items that we're going to hit. Forget closing the year strong. Virtual selling is the new way. Ready for value selling. And I think maybe that, maybe a couple of these start to bubble up a couple of ideas. Thinking about talk tracks, good at any time, but absolutely now's the time to work on our talk tracks. Identifying our best fit opportunity. We'll actually spend a couple of minutes in that section, doing actually a little bit of a workshop to give you guys something to actually go out and put in place, and then set the plan in place. And there is Molly. All right. So closing the year strong. As I was thinking about, this, by the way, this is a title that Sandler came up with, like, we've got to close the year strong. We do this every year around the end of the 3rd quarter, start of the 4th quarter. But the reality is, forget closing the year strong. With many sales organizations, now yours could be different, but I bet you in some of your heads, you're going, yeah, this might make some sense for me. Our sales results that we are achieving today started months ago. In other words, if I weren't doing the prospecting, really understanding who my ideal client was, having conversations back in March, April, May, and different for different businesses. Some businesses need a little bit longer cycle, some are a little bit shorter. But if I didn't start in the past, I might not be able to close the year strong. But I think one of the cool things that we have going on is that, again, I won't speak for everybody here. Lots of our clients had wonderful 2021s. Just things just really started to take off probably, the May, June timeframe, doing really well. But there's kind of a buy-in or a buyback that we get for 2021, in the sense that it was kind of a wacky year. Think of where we are. We've obviously got COVID. We've got the ability to do hybrid. Are we in the field? We've got some challenges with people making investments, not sure where their business is. So maybe we had a green light to have a little bit of a pause. So when we think about this starting months ago, think about now. Today is still September. Think about using the remainder of this year, not only to have a great year to close out, but to really set up 2022. If I do everything I'm supposed to do between now and the end of the year, I should have a great jump start to 2022. Maybe close the year great. Maybe some things we talk about today get you going next month or the month after. But really, I think we're in a spot where let's use today to get a jump start for 2022. Does anybody have any thoughts or comments about that? Or I see a lot of head nods going, yeah, that kind of makes sense. Any thoughts? I do have cool sound effects.
Hi, this is Miguel with Centering. Hey, Coop, thanks for inviting us.
Absolutely. Yeah. Welcome.
David, completely agree with you on all of that. I think, continuing to build pipeline and making sure you don't use the first quarter of 2022 to build a pipeline, that you're continually building that pipeline, and the work that we've done as a team starting in 2020 is helping us finish
Love it.
21 strong.
Yeah, I love it. It's actually a perfect line to really bring us to this third bullet, Miguel, which is learning how to fail. If we look at, we all have an opportunity to look back at our success for 2021, and you can't fix that right now. You can't go back to June and say, oh, we should have done this. Today's a new slate. Let's get going. So being comfortable with where you are is really, I know it sounds so basic. Molly was on a session that we did last week about mindset. And if our mindset is such that it is what it is where we are today, then we can take really Miguel's advice and say, let's use now as the launch pad to get going. Don't worry about where you've been. Think about where you are and where you can go. So we've got to be comfortable with that. And if we're in a situation where maybe we were kind of getting ready to get ready, we need to overcome that procrastination. All of the excuses that we have been using have to go out the window. They really do. And I know that sounds very critical to say, but whatever the environment is, wherever you're located, we have to learn how to succeed in the environment that we have in front of us, be it virtual, be it in person, be it a more hybrid approach. We've got to stop getting ready to get ready and really put in place an action plan that's going to get us going forward. And we're going to do a little bit of that homework as we wrap up today. That'll get us a little bit of hopefully a jump start into where we're going. Again, I'll open it up as I advance slides. Or does anybody have any questions or comments, thoughts here? Usually you'll ask me to buy time to get a sip as well, because I get more excited than you guys about these topics. So virtual selling is the wave. People are selling virtually today. So I still talk with sales folks who say, I'm struggling because my clients don't buy if I'm doing it this way. And there could be a moment of truth to that, or an ounce of truth to that. But the reality is most people are able to sell in a virtual environment. And it's awesome, because think about the ability that we have to be so much more efficient and use these tools and technology to our advantage. So instead of saying it's a hindrance, I can only sell to Daniel if I'm in front of him. It's the only way he's going to buy. We have to shake hands. Well, this wave is really saying we can be successful doing business in a virtual environment. And actually, it seems to be working pretty well for, I would say, most organizations, especially those that embrace it. So leverage technology to follow the sales process. We have the ability to use tools to do screen sharing. I'll get into that in the next slide a little bit more, but we can gather up different decision makers from around the world or from around different offices who maybe we couldn't get into the same room a year and a half ago. People's calendars are busy, but it's much easier to navigate a calendar when you're not having to spend time on the road. So leverage technology to follow your process. There's a lot of interaction that we can have in the selling world. And for those that have gone through some Sandler training, and we've got a couple of our clients on here, we understand that there's a sales process. You go from, I'll call it the pain step, to the budget step, to the decision-making step. Those are 3 independent meetings. But here's the real cool thing. I'd love to call on somebody, but I don't know anybody's business, so we got to be careful here. But think about, you have a sales meeting that lasts, say, an hour. and then you schedule out 3 weeks later for that next meeting to take place. Does that sound like a reasonable way to look at a sales process? Step one, today, we'll come back in 3 weeks, we'll meet again. May not be exact. Sometimes between step one and step two, there are smaller intermittent steps that need to occur. For example, the head of marketing needs to send me over some information, or someone in human resources needs to send me some employee data so that I can use that for my next meeting. I have the opportunity with this technology to say to those folks, hey, let's schedule a 10-minute conversation, something that's a little bit smaller that we would never do in a real life world, in a face-to-face world, because we're not going to drive out to their office. And there's no such thing as a 10-minute meeting when you drive out to an office. But now we can create these intermittent steps using technology, and it becomes super powerful. And what that does is when I go from meeting number 1 today to meeting number 2 in 3 weeks, what I'm not doing is opening the meeting saying, oh, we're still waiting on the data or information that you said you were going to send us over the last few weeks. We have an opportunity to take those intermittent steps and build little face-to-face meetings to make sure that those deliverables are actually happening. And I think the other thing is lean on the hybrid model. If your business, look, my business, I say I'm leaning on the virtual model. But if your business says a little bit of face-to-face, lean on a hybrid model. Find your balance that works best for your business, and that's going to bring you to the best outcomes. Does one outweigh the other one? Maybe. But if you're blending them as appropriately as they should be for your business, you will have the best possible outcomes. I'm going to go to the next slide, but I'm curious, any questions or thoughts here? Anybody have anything?
I'll try to break the ice. One thing that I've thought of since, we started doing these programs and embracing technology and these virtual hangouts is get comfortable with being uncomfortable. But as you get, adjusted to that, that's where the magic's going to happen. Be thoughtful with the changes that you want to make. Be intentional with making those pivots. And it's okay to ask for help, because this is a whole new playground for all of us to be playing in. So these changes are similar for all of us. So I would say just embrace the changes. It's okay to be uncomfortable, embrace that, be intentional with the changes and the directions you want to go in. And then it's okay to ask for help. We're all going through similar stuff. There can be a lot of great success and outcomes and advantages to doing and being a part of this shift into like a remote or a virtual world. You can embrace the change and succeed with it, or you can kind of get stuck in that paralysis analysis, like quicksand type of mode. And then, the rest of the pack blows by you. So I just wanted to at least, share that. And those are some of my thoughts.
And thank you for breaking the ice, Coop. Any other thoughts or comments here? No. Okay, we'll keep moving. So here are some, I think, I'll call them basic tactics, but these are some of the winning tactics that I'm seeing in the use of virtual selling. One is the ability to gain access to decision makers. I think that, depending upon your product and who needs to be brought in, this virtual wave is allowing us to gain that better access. And we should talk about being uncomfortable. I think when we would go out to an office and try to sell, if you were going to a company's home office trying to sell something, and you might need to ask to, hey, we need the chief financial officer in the next meeting. That might be uncomfortable. We got to find schedules. It's now I got to drive back out here and figure out, maybe it's even get on a plane. With this technology, it's much easier, but you still have to get out of your comfort zone to ask the question. But what I'm seeing is more of an uptake on gaining access to decision makers. The second winning tactic is, and I'll probably embellish this a little bit, and I'm a fan of the virtual world, because it saves me a lot of money on office space right now. Use a floating deck. I don't know if anybody's ever heard that term, but what I would have, anybody ever hear that term, floating deck? It's not in your backyard or in your, marina or anything, but we often are selling you by the way of features and benefits. And many firms have a deck or a PowerPoint that they share a lot of their information with. Now, that is not in the Sandler playbook typically. But what could be in the Sandler playbook is have a deck that covers all of the elements maybe that you'd like to share with a client, but use only the elements that are appropriate in that conversation. So what that means is have it at your fingertips so that you can grab. I can go from slide 8 to slide 23 to slide 27 instead of going slide 1, let me tell you about our company history. Slide 2, we were founded in 1937. Floating deck, think of that concept. And the beauty of virtual selling, and we've been training this for some time, is the ability to do a cheat sheet. So you guys are looking at me right now, and I have somebody actually feeding me all of these lines. No, I'm just kidding. You can't see anything outside of my grid. You can't see what else I have on my screen. And I'm being a little bit, tongue in cheek here. I only have the presentation and you folks up. But when I go into a sales call and when I'm training folks, what I suggest to them is have your assets ready. Similar to the floating deck, if there are tools or things that you want to show your prospect or maybe your client, have them ready. And here's the line. Let me see if I have that available for you. And then fake it till you pull it up. They will feel as if you have just customized the conversation and the presentation based upon what you're hearing. They do not see what you have here. Use that to your advantage. It's an absolute home run. The other thing that we suggest, and it's funny to go into client offices, is you got a whole screen. You can tape little notes up as reminders as well, because they don't see those as well. Another advantage of using virtual selling or being in the virtual selling space, the ability to use a whiteboard. Now, I don't know if anybody's ever heard this line. When they are writing, they are buying. So we love to get our clients to write down. So, I'll go back just a couple of years ago. If you came into my office and you had a problem, I'd say, would you do me a favor, write that up on the whiteboard so we don't forget it. When they are writing, they are buying. Well, we may not have that flexibility all the time today, but what we do have is the ability to pull up a whiteboard. So let me stop my share for 1 second. And let me call on Miguel. I'm going to call on you only because you put yourself out there already. Miguel, what's your biggest challenge in the world of selling right now?
Just access, finding people where they are, because COVID has given us a whole new challenge in reaching some of the decision makers.
So finding the right contact and gaining access to decision makers, did I get that right?
Yes.
I just summarized, validated back to Miguel what his sales challenge is and where is it now in terms of what he's looking at. He's now getting reinforced that this is his issue. And I'm not being a jerk about it, but I'm going, hey, Miguel, just a couple of notes so that we can both make sure that we're talking about the same topics. I have the ability using whiteboard technology, which is available in Teams, it's available in Zoom, to reinforce the pains that folks are sharing with us. It's an absolute home run methodology. And again, if we go back pre-COVID, getting people to write stuff down, home run. This is going to be my new technology. I'm using the whiteboard. And then screen share. As we're bouncing around, and you want to pick and choose, but you have the ability to, once again, use those assets that sit on your computer. And I go, hey, Molly, Molly, we have this technology. I'm not sure I can pull it up quick enough, but would you like to see it? Molly goes, yes. I'm fumbling around over here, pretending that I can't get it. Working on a Mac is really hard. And I click a button, I go, Molly, this is what we're talking about. Would you like to explore a little bit more? I have so much technology at my fingertips to help bring a prospect into a sales mode, into a buying mode, where they are feeling as if we are customizing as we go. Otherwise, you got to carry all this stuff into somebody's office pre-COVID, non-virtual. That's the beauty of virtual selling. Let me hit the pause button, because my guess is we might have a couple of questions here. I don't know if anybody does have a question, thought.
I don't have a question, David. I just have a comment. This exact same situation scenario happened to me last week on Tuesday, and I had teed up a document that I wanted to share just in case. I just kind of anticipated. And when I brought it up to them, they were like, "Oh, wow, this is great. This is exactly what we needed." So it was just very powerful, and it worked very, very well. Totally
Awesome.
agree with that concept.
Awesome. Love it. Thank you for sharing. Any other questions? Coop, you want to break the ice again? No, I'm just kidding. Just kidding. All right. Here's the, as I was putting this together, I'm going, because we are always talking at Sandler, I'm going, wow, this is the one that actually, not only does it scare me, but I think that this is our greatest opportunity for sales training purposes. But what we're really heading into, and I've been saying this probably for the better part of 12 months now, 2022 is going to bring more of a focus onto value selling. And what I've seen happen over the last 18 plus months is there has been a much greater emphasis on good salespeople versus bad salespeople. Now, the bad news is every other salesperson that exists in the world is making you look bad. It's factual. People want to steer clear of salespeople, not because you're doing a bad job or because they don't trust you. It's because they've been conditioned to know that the salesperson is only in it for themselves. And what we've seen is really a spotlight on bad salespeople, meaning that good salespeople need to consistently elevate that game. And here's what we've got going on is we're going to have price pressures. Now, at Sandler, we don't participate in anything, we don't participate in economic downturns, inflation, and we don't buy into any of that stuff. We just say everything's going to be great. We're going to keep going. So that's the mindset we're going to have here. But we're going to expect price pressure. Think about it. We've got, a couple of folks on here who work with supply chain sales. Todd, there's no price pressure in the supply chain world, is there?
Absolutely not.
So we're dealing with price pressure, which means our clients, your clients, could have less money for investment. And that means less wallet share. And they're probably going to spend their money in areas that make the most sense. So those that are not in the position to value sell, if you've been selling by cutting your cost by 20, 25%, that is not going to fly in the future because you're not going to hit your margins that you need. So we've got to be able to identify true needs, and that means more consultative selling, pain-based questions, understanding truly what's behind the decision that our prospects are looking for. And that means asking deeper questions. We call that the pain funnel at Sandler. And what that means is we are better understanding when they want your product or service, there is no advancement to, let me show you how we can fix it. There is a process to consistently peel back that onion to make sure we understand that this is exactly what our prospect is looking for and what impact, whether it's financial, whether it's resource driven, whether it's efficiency driven, what impact not having this solution in place will have. So we are going to spend more time better understanding the needs of our prospects than ever before. And if we're not doing that, we could, depending upon our marketplace, what we're selling, we could find ourselves in a position of close rates going down or price pressure just really killing our bottom line. So we've got to be aware of this. And we've got to have a game plan to come out of 2022 to make sure we know what questions to ask, and how to better understand the pain of the prospect. Questions, thoughts, comments? This looks like a very heavy page.
David, I think you're right on. I think as the ramifications of COVID right now and drops in revenue kind of continue, people are going to be more focused on needs versus wants, and you just need to make sure you're one of those needs.
Yeah, Miguel, what is it that you guys sell?
We sell a different model of care, group prenatal care service. We help
Okay.
practices transition from a one-on-one prenatal care, well child care visit to a group visit.
Okay.
Mhm.
So you're in the healthcare space, if I understand that correctly.
That's correct.
That's probably a pretty easy space to sell in, right?
No, it's not.
No, come on.
You have people wanting, trying to stay healthy, keep their patients, their employees healthy.
Yeah,
So, we've had to make the transition to virtual selling, like you started off with, and it's people are getting more and more used to being in meetings virtually.
sure.
So you have to pivot, adapt or die.
Yeah, and what you're saying actually, Miguel, really hits home in the sense that when we think of healthcare, we talk about the pains that people are trying to solve, the buyer. Healthcare is an interesting space, and I don't know a ton about it because it's not necessarily my background, but often if somebody has an illness or a challenge, the price of the care is whatever it's going to be. We'll write a check for almost anything when I have an immediate need. Long-term health solutions are a bit more challenging to sell because the gain is somewhere down the road and you're trying to avoid it. So it really creates a challenging selling environment where you are going to be in that environment. Molly sells healthcare. That challenge is down the road unless I need healthcare solutions immediately, or if it's life insurance and a neighbor just passed away. So we've got to be super strategic in how we're going to bring a future challenge back to an investment that I want to make today. And if we start thinking about throwing in price pressures, that will make that decision-making process just a little bit more challenging. And I think, not to, belabor your business, some of us, depending upon our product and solution, will be in a very similar boat. Doesn't have to just be healthcare. Could be other products and services out there that we've got to be super strategic in how we handle that prospect so that they're willing and able to make a buying decision. So I'm gonna keep jumping here a little bit, and Coop is sending these out, and I will suggest to you, if you've got a sales team or if it's yourself, building these out a little bit more for 2022, even for the rest of the year. These are things that we are consistently working on, and I chose, actually I originally chose 3 or 4 of these, and then I said, you know what, let's give a little bit more substance here. How do we open our sales meetings? Do we have a process? And I call these talk tracks. I don't like to talk about scripts because the prospect was never given the script. So if you go with a script and the prospect doesn't have one, inevitably it goes the wrong direction. So you can't memorize anything, but how do you open a sales meeting? And sales meetings tend to open in 2 very generic ways. I'll keep it simple. One is, hey, here's my challenge. Let me tell you about it. That's what the prospect will say. We love those types of sales meetings because when the prospect gives us something to work with, we can then start to ask questions and dig into it. But we all in sales run into that sales meeting where the prospect says, well, you set up the meeting. I have no idea what it is you do. Tell me about yourself. And that's when salespeople stumble. And if we have a game plan for how we will open a sales meeting in our back pocket, we can just grab that and go into the conversation and hopefully get the prospect to open up a little bit more. And we've got some really cool charts on doing this. Uncovering pains. So when a prospect tells us that they have an issue, how are we uncovering that? And more importantly, how are we digging deeper into that pain to make sure it's the right pain that we should be solving for? Because sometimes when we don't ask the right questions, we solve for the wrong issue. And prospects, we're all in different businesses. Prospects don't know how to buy your stuff. You know how to sell it, you know it inside and out, but they don't know how to buy it, and they may use different terminology, not always ask the right questions, and we've got to help them uncover that pain. Otherwise, we could solve for an incorrect issue. I see it all the time in the technology space, because those technology experts know their stuff inside and out, and the buyers don't, and the buyers know buzzwords. And sometimes our technology folks will solve for the wrong issue. How do we transition? And I'll hit the pause button actually in a moment. How do we transition to the next meeting? Now, I know not everybody's on camera, and my suspicion is typically most of the folks that we deal with that show up on these calls do not have a one-call close. So what's our transition to the next meeting? So for example, if I'm selling to Coop, and we had a great first meeting, it was 45 minutes. How do I make sure that I establish the next meeting before I walk out the door? What is my talk track for that? And then I'll hit number 4, which is how do I handle objections? Now there's a whole host of objections that we can get from a prospect. How am I going to handle those? But if we leverage step number 3 or talk about talk track number 3, let's imagine I asked Coop at the conclusion of our first 45-minute meeting. It went really well. And I feel like there's a connection here that there might be an opportunity to do some business. And I say, Coop, suggest we open up our calendars and get to that next meeting. And Coop says, you know what, Dave? Slow it down a little bit. I'm not ready to put you back on the calendar. How do we handle that objection? These are some, and I'll go through the other ones. These are some of the talk tracks, and there's more. There's a laundry list, but these are some of the high-level talk tracks. If we don't have them locked and loaded, we will be chasing opportunities that are never going to close. We will probably be doing proposals, quotes, presentations for prospects that might be just gathering up information. And we don't have the time to be inefficient. Let me hit the pause button after number 4, and there's a couple of chats out there as well.
David, my name's Stephanie. I'm from CHI. I work with
Hi, Stephanie.
and Lisa. Hi. So I was off camera, and I heard you say some people are off camera. I'm like, oh, well, I can be on camera. So I guess my question is, I'm in a lot of meetings, and like even this morning in a meeting, it's a monthly meeting that I've had for the past year. And Miguel and I are always the only ones on camera. So what is your advice on saying to people it'd be really great to see your face? I mean, how do we get them to engage without sounding like a jerk?
Yeah, so there's one way. Hey, Coop, make sure everybody's on the freaking camera next time we do this. And Stephanie, I wasn't picking on you. You were all
No, that's okay.
You were all on the side of my screen. I couldn't even see you.
But that's okay. I mean, I was eating lunch and listening, but I mean, you bring up a good point. I mean, it's difficult to have conversation when you're the only one, you know, people are staring at you, but you can't see them.
And I really glossed over. I didn't even bring it up in our virtual selling best practices, we'll call it. But any sales meeting you have in a virtual setting. Now, typically I'm setting the majority of my meetings when I'm on the phone with somebody. That may not be the case. So when I'm on the phone, and I'll pick on Molly, she has just now moved right into the middle. She's going, why me? Hey, Molly, listen, when we get together next Tuesday, we're going to do it on Zoom. And the only thing I'd ask is if you and any of your colleagues that are on, can we all be on camera just so we can make that connection since we're not going to be face to face? Could you help me out there? So really nurturing, really gentle, but putting it out there. If I'm doing an email meeting, I will send an email that says, hey, suggestion. I love the term suggestion as opposed to have everybody on their calendars because it's a little bit softer and nurturing. And there's a psychological move there, but suggest we all are on our cameras. I'll be on mine. Now, if you arrive to the meeting, I think you're okay saying, hey, Molly, a huge favor. Are you in a place where you can get on your camera? So we can actually connect here. So just feel free to ask that question.
Okay.
And I love that question. And I will get, when I talk to the folks that we work with, when I'm talking to them, I didn't feel comfortable asking. We need to get over that. Easier said than done. Or they're afraid that the people are going to say no. They very rarely say no. Now, sometimes they have a technical issue, but they very rarely say no. And when we talk about Zoom fatigue, and I think if I said show of hands, we've all heard of Zoom fatigue.
Mm-hmm.
It's because we're wasting time and because we're not getting on camera and we're not being efficient in our meetings with clear, hey, we only need to be on this call for 25 minutes as opposed to an hour. That will reduce Zoom fatigue. And when I can see your body language and when we can make that connection, that'll make that moment, that selling moment, just a much better experience. And no rocket science, better rapport. There's better rapport as the outcome.
Yeah.
Great question.
I
Thank
don't
you
know
for
if
that.
this is helpful or not, but sometimes, as you're going through the sales process, I know one of the things you like to talk about is disarming somebody. So you could maybe say, hey, it's all right if you don't want to have your camera on, but we find we actually build better outcomes when we're, interacting face to face. Would you be all right with that? So serving it up and disarming somebody, like, it's okay if you really can't or don't want to, but we do find that we have better outcomes or better rapport from the get-go when we do get to finally meet face to face, and it's in a virtual, playground of sorts. What do you thought about that?
Coop, you just got my mind going, and I'm looking at the clock, making sure we have enough time. So we have a technique that we have at Sandler. A couple of folks will recognize it. It's called the dummy curve, and we're actually renaming it. We're going to call it the professional curve, because we think dummy is not a good way to, it's only been that way for 50 years, but now we're starting to go, wait a second, we need to clean this up and get into the professional phase. So when we were talking earlier about having assets on your computer at the ready and then struggling, hey, let me see if I have this at my fingertips. That's the dummy curve. You act as if you're a little bit helpless. Mm-hmm. So and what that does is that creates an environment where your prospect will almost lean in and want you to have it and want you to succeed. It's really a rescue effect. Very similarly, Stephanie, we can turn off our camera, or I could go, Stephanie, is my camera working right now? I'm having trouble with my tech. Stephanie, are you having the same challenge? Mm-hmm. Dummy curve. Have them rescue you, and then they'll go, no, I just never turned it on. They will always fall into the trap. Mm-hmm. Todd, you've never fallen into one of my dummy curve traps, right? Never have. Most people are genuinely want to help other people. So when you struggle a little bit, they will bail you out, and then they'll do what you ask of them to do. It's actually very cool.
Those are great.
That's helpful.
Yeah. Thanks, Stephanie and David. Those are great points. And we talk about that a lot. And on the other side, this virtual selling has become very informal as well. We see a lot of people, executives are sitting at home in ponytails or the guys are sitting in t-shirts. It's just added a whole new level of selling styles and adapting to it. And being in healthcare, one of the things that we've seen is that sometimes, and I like the idea of just telling them or asking them, but we've seen that there are some limitations, not only in technology, but in processes or procedures or rules that the hospitals have. They can't have their staff on camera just because they might have a patient or information behind them. But yeah, Stephanie and Lisa and I, we talk about this a lot, about these things.
Yeah, definitely. Rules of engagement. Well, if an organization has certain rules or regulations, obviously we're not going to overdo those. But I love your point, Miguel, on the intimacy. We're getting to see people's pets walk by, a dog barking, and for years when that was occurring, people were kind of, cringing, and we absolutely welcome it, because apparently that happens at Miguel's organization.
Yeah, I'm loud because you're saying that, and Lisa's cracking up because.
but we love it because you get to know people a little bit more. I know Molly has a cat.
Yeah, I tell people I've seen more cat butts than that could last me a lifetime.
There you go, there you go, there you go. All right, so talk tracks, I'll hit these last three. Asking for decisions. At Sandler, we do not have a closing technique. We tend to not ask for decisions, but what is our process for advancing the deal forward? That might have been a better way to frame that one. How are we going to navigate forward? I am a big fan of always going to the calendar. If that prospect is willing to put you on the calendar for the next step, and you outline what that next step is all about, that is a leading indicator of a potential buyer. Versus when they don't put you on the calendar, that might be a leading indicator that they might be, not a great prospect. How are we asking for access to decision makers? And also back to handling objections, if I ask Todd, hey Todd, my suggestion is we speak with, your CEO, that might be a great question until Todd says, I don't think she needs to be part of this conversation. How am I handling that? If we build a library, and I don't want scripts, but I want practice talk tracks, how are we doing that? And then this last element, and there's a dozen plus more, asking for money. At some point, we need to talk about what the investment is to solve your issue. How do we have that conversation so that it doesn't show up in a proposal and floor somebody and they fall out of their chair and say, how much was this? Having that conversation earlier so it's preemptive, so the prospect knows what it's going to take to become a client of yours. So here's where I thought we could spend a couple of moments, and we'll do this quickly. We have an acronym, we call it, care for your client. CARE stands for keep, attain, recapture, and expand your current client. We focused primarily in our attain, the A bucket, which means I want to go out and find a new piece of business. So take a moment, and actually, what I'll do is I might actually have this on my my dashboard here. So I'll actually share the document with you so you've got it. But what I'd love for you to do is just write down 3 characteristics of your best fit client. And I'll put this document in the chat box so you guys can, after the session, take a look at it. So 3 characteristics of your best fit client. So I know we've got a number of people. So if I call on somebody, this could be dangerous, but Linda Ashby, are you in a place where you can speak?
Yeah, I'm here.
All right. So can you give us just one characteristic of a best fit client?
Well, we are in the process materials role, materials distributors business. So our best client would be someone that is able to need some of our materials while not not overcoming what our inventory may be or what we might be able to offer a promise. We have to find the right fit for what we are able to supply at this time. Does that kind of make sense?
It does make sense. So they have a need for your product and they're willing to do it within your time frame as well.
Right. They're willing to do it, but they're also, like I said, some things right now in the supply world are very difficult to come across. So if there's long lead times or if there's something that they need of immediate nature that we can't fulfill, that wouldn't be our best fit client. That would be something that they would have to move on, but we could certainly adjust to whatever their needs are if it's in that a paradigm of what we're able to offer, if that makes sense.
It does make sense. So let's hang on to that. And by the way, when we talk about characteristics of our best fit client, you probably can come up with anywhere from a dozen to say 2 dozen. Stephanie, is there a characteristic that you might have for a best fit client?
There's so many. I think one of the main ones, they're ready to actively engage and have strong leadership support for system transformation.
Love it. So ready to engage and leadership support. I know that that sounds basic, but we tend to, as organizations, not document this stuff. We have it up here. And then when we start working on an opportunity, we say, oh, they're awesome. And then when we start losing the deal, we go, well, we never had leadership support. If we can do this on the front end, we're going to be in really good shape. Misty, are you in a spot where you can talk?
I am.
Give us one characteristic. Thank you.
Their computer is broke.
Computer, they got a problem. So
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you, Misty. Those are all characteristics. These are the low-hanging fruit ones. They have a need. Maybe they're in a certain region. Maybe we have access to certain decision makers. Maybe they're a certain size company, or maybe they're individuals with a certain income level. When you start thinking about your best fit clients, that's going to be a game changer as you roll through the end of the year, because now you're focused in on who is my best prospect. Now, I'll give you another takeaway to give a little jump start to 2022 is think about in your current portfolio of clients, your existing client base, and think of one client that has an opportunity to do more business with you, and write their name down on a piece of paper. I am not going to ask anybody to share it. This is a safe environment. Just write it down for yourself. One client in your current portfolio that has an opportunity, because they're a best fit client, to expand their relationship with you. They can do more business with me. After you've written that client name down, what I'd suggest you do is write down your next step. What am I going to do with that opportunity, and when am I going to do it by? Create a next step. If you're able to do that, you start to build a little bit of an action plan. And by the way, this is very light lifting. We spend a couple of hours doing this exercise in real life, so we're doing it the really abridged way. If you do that within your current portfolio and identify 3 existing clients and create next steps, 5 existing clients and create next steps, the opportunity to find business in your existing portfolio is typically there, and you have about a 70+% chance of winning that business. So if you want to close the year strong or leapfrog or jumpstart 2022, don't just look at adding new business. We want to add. We always want to add to our portfolio. Look within your existing block. There might be some low-hanging fruit. We tend to not have a strategy or action plan to go after that existing business. But there's a lot of companies that have opportunity there. We had an organization, we spent a bit of time, a couple of years back doing this, and they put together a whole program on how they were going to reach out to existing clients. They went out to their first client, who happened to be in Chicago, and they met with the senior vice president of technology, and they walked out with a $250,000 piece of business. Just by having a next step meeting. Just want to make sure things are going well. There is low-hanging fruit in this opportunity. Mm-hmm. The last piece I'll throw out there is, and this was number 6, and this was kind of the, this just kind of came to me over the last week. We got to start. You know, set your prospecting cadence. We tend to not always prospect as effectively as we intend to. We find every excuse not to prospect. Look for opportunity to have a consistent prospecting methodology. So we got Coop on here. You know, we use Coop for NerdWise. Actually, I was driving. I got Pliables for lunch today. If anybody has Pliables, that was a great lunch in my house today. But I was driving home going, oh my God, like what's our prospecting this week? Oh, Coop's sending emails. And, you know, we've got some LinkedIn, and we do cold calling. We've got video going out as well. We've got a mix. When are these things happening? Do I have a good mix? Am I consistent? Am I asking for introductions? I was out doing a session last week, and a couple of people said, I get all my business from referrals. So that's awesome. That means you don't like prospecting. So sometimes we do get all of our business from referrals. We tend not to ask for referrals or introductions. We tend to hope that they come our way. And when they do, it's awesome, but we can proactively ask. And that's another prospecting behavior that we can put into our cadence. I don't have to ask for 20 a week, maybe 1 a week, maybe 2 a week. Start small and add that in. But the key here is start thinking about your prospecting activities and how you will build a week-to-week strategy so that, again, you're building out through the fourth quarter this year. And then the bottom piece is really, it's just time to take action, go ahead and really hit the pedal, be consistent so that you roll out this year as strong as possible and open up 2022, really in a better position than your competition. That is the ultimate objective here. So we're hitting 2:55. I wasn't sure how long this was going to take. Never know. Hopefully I didn't put anybody to sleep in the last 55 minutes. I noticed nobody nodded off that was on video, so we're in really good shape there. So, can't speak for everybody on the phone though. Questions, takeaways, one thing that maybe you'll do differently.
Anybody?
Some of the,
Tell me what CARE stands for again.
Sure, and I put it in the chat function.
Oh, I'm
Lisa.
sorry.
No, but I don't even think it says it there.
I got
CARE
keep
is
and
an
retain.
acronym. Yeah, you'll see 4 buckets: keep, attain, recapture, and expand. And those are the types of clients in our portfolio. And there are characteristics that each one of those have. Typically, those characteristics are consistent around the entire grid. The only difference is really in the keep space. Those are clients that absolutely love you. They're not going anywhere. So they are typically low maintenance clients. Everything else is attain, I want to find new. Recapture, we did business with them in the past. Expand is we do business with them today.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yep, thanks for asking.
David, some of the biggest,
chat if you didn't take it, if you didn't download it.
some of
Sorry,
the biggest,
Miguel, go ahead.
it's okay. Some of the biggest takeaways that resonated with me is just, the work that we did early on in the year is going to prepare us for a strong year. One of the things that we did as a team, most organizations wait until the end of the year to share the 2020 goals. I shared those in July, the numbers that we're going to be working on towards 2022. So everyone is focused on the process. Don't worry about the numbers, focus on the process, because the numbers will come if we focus on that process and building the pipeline. So that resonated with me. And also the floating deck, asking a lot of questions up front. Good salespeople know when to shut up because they can talk themselves out of a sale. And understanding their pain points early on. You can tailor your presentation. You don't have to talk about things. Talk about I posted it. There's a saying, sell the problem, sell the solution, not the product. And by understanding their pain points, asking a lot of questions up front, it gives you the ability just to highlight that in your deck. And don't worry about the other things right now that really weren't part of the conversation.
Yeah,
Absolutely love it. It's very Sandler-esque. Absolutely love it.
yeah. And in addition to that, like with the floating deck, or as you're introducing yourself to this prospecting opportunity, instead of going into all of the slides in your deck or going into your sales pitch, when I get on phone calls, and I know many of our sales members on our team do this, is, hey, I could dive into a bunch of things, but what was it that made you want to take the meeting with me? And
Yeah.
me starting to barf and just like, puke all this information all over them. It's like, hey, I could probably tell you a lot of the things that we do really well and the outcomes that you really want. But instead of doing that, what made you interested to want to take the meeting with me? Because you decided to spend 10 or 15 minutes because of something that we did, or that, I tried to engage you with. So asking instead of just kind of sharing and just spewing all this information, and then kind of just zip it and wait and watch and listen and learn.
And
Yeah.
Coop, I know we're short on time, and Misty wrote in the chat, I like that. And when you talk about talk tracks, that is a talk track. What Coop just said, hey, listen, what is it you would be hoping to gain in our conversation today?
Yeah.
We have a lot of folks using that to open up sales meetings. Pretty effective.
Mhm.
Sometimes they give you something to work with. Sometimes they don't. So you got to be prepared. Love it. Love it.
Yeah, I was taught early on, you have 2 ears and 1 mouth, use them proportionately.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I'm dangerous on these because I talk too much on these training sessions.
David, you do an excellent job. And, because I know we're coming up against the hour, I think this was honestly one of the best programs we have. And David, it's a testament to how, credible and valuable your experience is. I can't wait to have another one of these with you in the future. I know we're going to have them. I think it's in the month of October and November with David Trapani. But again, thank you for just putting this together, leading us to victory. And, everyone does have access to this slide deck. And if you do happen to just want a copy of the recording, either shoot me an email or your dedicated account manager at Nerdwise an email, and we'll be happy to provide it once it becomes available. Outside of that, David, if people want to get in touch with you, what's the best way?
Yeah, the best way, my email is in the presentation. So when you get that, if you need my contact information, I can actually very quickly put it into the chat. And I have one rule, and again, I do these pretty frequently. Let's see if my contact info is in here. If you do want to reach out to me, reach out to me. It does not mean that you are buying from me. It simply means you have a question, you want to learn more, you wanted to double check something. I'm not going to say, awesome, send me a check. That's not the intention. You have a question, great. We'll see where it takes us. And that makes life easy. And let me see if I have my contact info. It is in the chat box right now.
Cool.
Yeah, and thank you guys for being so interactive. This was good. Makes it real easy on my end.
Yeah, no, thank you, everybody. Again, we'll have more of these opportunities coming in the future. If you're a part of Sandler or just in the open world publicly and you want to join in, that's awesome. Tell your peers, tell anyone in your network. The more people we bring in here, the more participation that we have, the better that we are able to cultivate, successes at higher levels, and the more we can unlock what it is that you're looking for. So thank you all again for joining us. And I look forward to seeing you all again here, not too, far down the road.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Take care, everybody.
Have a great afternoon, everyone. Bye-bye.